Good morning. My name is Father Stephen Flatt, and I want to share with you this morning some reflections on Psalm 100. You'll notice that today I'm not wearing a dog collar. I'm wearing my other uniform, my nurse's uniform, that I wear as the head of nursing and quality for surgery at Poole Hospital. And I'm recording this reflection on Friday afternoon after a busy week in the hospital. Psalm 100. Make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Worship the Lord with gladness. Come into his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter his gates with thanksgiving and his courts with praise. Give thanks to him. Bless his name. For the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. I am by nature an optimist, someone whose glass is always half full and who can see a silver lining to every cloud, which makes me quite an annoying person really. However, I found that over recent weeks this is increasingly difficult and hard work to be hopeful. Maybe it's just tiredness and part of the long recovery process following my own coronavirus infection. But there are times when even I have felt a sense of despair and hopelessness, a feeling of what's the point? At times like these, the words of Psalm 100 can seem difficult to comprehend and almost mocking in nature. How can the Lord be good and his love enduring and steadfast when it appears the whole world has been visited by a plague? Around us we see the daily statistics and the reality of suffering and death brought about by this horrible virus. With all of this happening, it doesn't really feel as if we are the sheep of his pasture, with a sovereign God guiding our path. However, it is at this point that I have to remind myself of the need for perspective and context. I was interested to read an article last weekend regarding a news report about a VE Day celebration, a street party, where from one of the photographs on the news, it looked like a whole crowd of people had gathered together in contravention of social distancing rules and good common sense. The crowd seemed large and dense, consisting of people of all ages, families with children, singles, and older people, all in close proximity. The article went on to point out that the angle, face on, of the photograph was deceptive in making it appear that these folk were physically closer than they really were. Had the photograph been taken from above, it would have shown in the reality that they were suitably separated and spread out. The imperative of Psalm 100 is not to see God's love and faithfulness through the lens of our current situation, but to perceive his nature through the lens of faith expressed in praise and thanksgiving. In other words, we don't allow our present situation, the way we're feeling, the circumstances around us to colour our perception of God and his steadfast love toward us. The very act of offering praise and thanksgiving to God elevates us. It lifts us up so that we're able to gain a different perspective and see current life in the context of God's creative and nurturing love. Over the last few weeks, like many others, I've put on a bit, not quite a lot, of lockdown weight. I blame all the baking and eating of cake and bread. I now need to lose the excess pounds and have been looking at different ways to do this. I quite like the look of the Couch to 5K programme. It's always hard to start something, especially when you're not in the zone. But this regime helps you to take some first tentative steps and gradually build on them. And as the title suggests, this programme is designed to help you move at your own pace from a position of being couch potato to being able to run 5k. Likewise, it is often difficult to begin to experience and perceive the goodness of God if you're not in the zone. If you feel weighed down by a heavy load of lockdown despair and hopelessness brought about by overindulgence in reading and listening to coronavirus news. Psalm 100 sets out for us a programme by which we can begin to move from hopelessness to hope, from despair to a perception of the guiding hand of the Good Shepherd. The motivation and ability to give thanks and worship God is often challenging and can seem almost forced when times are tough. But the more we practice, the more natural and instinctive it will become. And this too is where faith comes into play. Faith enables us to go beyond the current, to move forward despite all that is happening around us, not seeing but trusting in the sovereignty of God, in the shepherd leading his sheep. I love the National Theatre on London's South Bank, an amazing piece of architecture. I've spent many happy hours at the understudy, a real ale bar at the base of the building, sitting back and enjoying and admiring the impressions of the shuttering in the concrete structure of this beautiful, brutal building. Faith is like the shuttering into which we can pour worship and thanksgiving, supporting it as it becomes solid and able to support us in rising above our present circumstances and in gaining a wider perspective, seeing our current situation in the context of God's enduring, steadfast love. Just like the Couch to 5K programme, Psalm 100 follows a programme that builds. We begin with the first steps of worship and praise. These are not reliant on how we feel, but instead focus on what is due to God. Those things which he is due because of who he is and not what he does. This act of worship draws us up into his presence, and we begin to know that he is God. This isn't about our understanding or our comprehending, but about something which is much more visceral, something that we perceive in the depths of our being. He is God. He has created us. We are his, and we are precious to him. With this reality, we are able to move closer into his presence, deeper into his inner courts. Worship and praise is solidifying and allows us to climb higher and offer thanksgiving, blessing his name. God our Creator, God our Provider, God our Healer, God our Sanctifier, God our Lord. And from this position we can see that the Lord is good, and his steadfast love does endure forever, not just to us now in our present situation, but looking forward and back towards all people in all times. Lifted up, we are able to see our present situation in perspective and put our current circumstances in context. Things may be difficult, life may be bleak, but God's love is unwavering, and his creation are assured that he will continue to lead and guide us into a brighter future. You see, it is all about perspective and context. Looking at things face on gives a false impression of trouble and despair crowding in on us. A warped perspective, however, being lifted into the presence of God through worship and thanksgiving, enables a wider perspective where we see the truth of the situation in the context of our sovereign God's eternal loving care. If we follow the couch to 5K program, it will help us to lose the banana loaf weight gained during a lockdown and help us to reconnect with a healthier and fitter version of ourselves. If we follow the Psalm 100 program, it will help us to shake off the weight of despair and hopelessness and reconnect with a healthier and more mentally and spiritually balanced version of ourselves. Know that the Lord is God. He made us. We are the sheep of his pasture, and his steadfast love toward us endures from generation to generation.